And for more on this story, we turn now to Dr. Jan-Cédric HANSEN, who is an advisor to the World Health Organization on epidemics. Many thanks for joining us from the French city of Rouen.
Good evening.
What do you do if you're Chinese authorities at this point on the eve of Chinese New Year?
Well, what they have learned from the SARS epidemics, and obviously they have taken good measures. There are now good reporting processes, and they share their information internationally. So right now we have a virus that is far less deadly. So far it behaves, and we see the behavior of that virus, which is the mortality rate is only 1.5, as opposed to nearly 30% for the previous virus from the coronavirus family. So we are facing a very nasty virus, that's for sure. We don't know yet what the kinetics is going to be. So is it going to infect a vast amount of people or just a limited number of people? So far, the Chinese are doing their best to contain the epidemic. Obviously, there is some leakings. And what we should consider is to be aware of that, to be very cautious about the travel history of all people presenting an influenza-like syndrome when they visit their doctors, GPs, or emergency ward all over the world. Of course, it has to be something to be taken into account at the global health security, and all the doctors should be involved in that. But when we talk about the way to protect ourselves, standard barriers against airborne viruses should be enough to limit the impact of that epidemic at the world level so far.
So far, could it mutate further?
For example, if you want me, mutation is something to have in mind, but it's more, will the virus increase its impact on the health of the people? Because there is two ways for viruses. The more they replicate, the more deadly they become, or the more weak they become. And so far, we don't know yet how this virus will evolve. Right now, what we should have is, because there's lots of flu everywhere, as well as that virus emerging, what we should do is prevent any people with fever to go on board flights, as we did previously with others, with the Ebola, for example. We should take measures to limit the travel of people that are obviously sick, and we should pay attention to anybody who developed a virus syndrome and influenza syndrome within 2 weeks of traveling to a zone where we know that virus is expanding. And doing so, we should be able to contain that spread or that potential pandemic without limiting too much the travel of the individuals. And we should, in that way, have a balance between economic and social imperatives and the healthcare protection, global healthcare protection of the population.
So when you compare with recent years, you're saying it's not as bad as the SARS virus so far, but it's too early to tell. What you're describing, Jan-Cédric HANSEN, we live in a globalized world, and as such, really when one case reaches Beijing and Shanghai, is that enough for health authorities around the world to take measures?
Oh, it should be a coordinated response all over the world, that is for sure. And every single doctor facing someone with a a flu-like syndrome with a history of traveling to the contaminated area within 2 weeks should report that case and consider it as a potential case and apply isolation and indeed protect himself with the protection and normal protection against airborne viruses. But as the Chinese mentioned on the report, if you have disposable masks, that's very important, and that's a good way to do it. So we should be prepared. We should take this seriously, but we shouldn't panic, or we shouldn't imagine it's going to be a nightmare. If we behave accordingly and responsibly, then we should be able to contain that outbreak.
Should be able to contain that outbreak. One final question. How seriously do you take news reports that warn of the potential of super viruses that could wipe out, could decimate populations?
That's a risk to bear in mind, but see what happened to Ebola. We had the fear that it would be that kind of super virus, and what happens is the more people it contaminated, the weaker it became, and that's most of the behavior of the virus. So right now, this one is brand new. We don't have enough feedback on that kind of virus, and we don't know its behavior within a large population. So we don't know yet how we should fear it. So we should be prepared. But it doesn't seem, there's no huge signals that warns us that it would be that kind of super virus. But indeed, globalization implies a global risk regarding health security. That's something we have to bear in mind, and we should develop procedures and a kind of set of mind prepare such events to occur.
Jan-Cédric HANSEN, Secretary General of the Global Health Security Alliance and the member of the French Society for Disaster Medicine. Thank you for speaking with us from the French city of Rouen. Stay with us. There's more to come here on France 24. We have